Hi, this is Nick here from OnlyFabs. This week's video is an Azalea Blitz skirmish deck pick by Sebastian. He played in the same event that I did and he went 3 and 3 with Azalea. So I asked him directly after the tournament, so what changes did you make and is the tier list now completely different? And it actually wasn't according to him, but what he did for us is make an entire video explaining all the choices in his deck, going through it in chronological order as you see here on the screen. I've also made timestamps which will leave in the comment, and he goes into depth in about all the choices and what cards are useful in what matchup, especially regarding the arrows. I especially like the part about defense reactions because I love defense reactions. But all in all, I think it's a really great video. And if you're learning Azalea, if you want to have some more insights in how other players play it, definitely watch the video. But of course, there is one thing. It is spoiler season, Memorial Ground. I directly asked Sebastian, okay, what are you going to switch out, of course? And well, this was on the day that the card was spoiled. He didn't have an initial thought. Maybe he wants to test it. I don't know. But from my perspective, change out an arrow. I think, especially if there is a blue and a yellow version of it, which the only thing I can speculate on is that it will go to 0 and 1. The yellow version will, from my perspective, greatly help cast your arrows. Of course, it doesn't block. It's always an issue, but changing out a couple of arrows that are less impactful in a wide range of matchups and allows you to actually cast some other arrows, use the Azalea ability, of course, the hero ability. Maybe that can even help out a go wide strategy. And having go wide and dominate, I don't know, but I definitely want to see it in action. So here's the video, but with one final message from my part. The hero you play, the cards you pick, it should fit your playstyle and it should match your local meta. So don't be afraid to try stuff, and that's the only way you're gonna get better. Play, play, play. And with that regard, if you want to play and if you speak Dutch, leave a comment in the comment section of the video, because we play actually every month with a group of about 10 to 14 people. So if you want to get better, playing is the way. It's a beginner friendly tournament where you plan your own matches and you actually have a limitless amount of time to actually play them. Hope you enjoyed the video, because I certainly did, and see you next time.
I give you a small update about my Azalea deck. It's been a bit of a pet project for me and some members of the Dutch community to make Ranger work. So that's why I took this deck to 64-person skirmish last Saturday to see how she fare. And eventually I went 3-3 and became 24th, which was actually quite good for me. I was quite happy about that. Two of my losses were against Ira, which is the worst matchup of this deck. So I'm trying to improve that matchup. And the other one was to Dorinthia, which I almost won, but I couldn't find the last big dominate arrow or the buff to go with it. So a bit of a close call there, but almost there. The general strategy of the deck is go tall, so a big arrow which hampers your opponent with some buffs and hit them with it, and then next round do it again. Sometimes go wide a bit, but mostly go tall. So let's go over the equipment first. My bow of choice is Redliner, at least for Blitz. It's the cheaper bow, so that's mainly why it's here. I don't have the resources to spare to get the additional card draw, so that's why I went for Redliner. For headpiece, the Skullbone Cross Wrap. It's absolutely needed if you want to go tallish. So you want to know what's on top of your deck. You want to know if it's an arrow. You want to shoot it. So that's why it's there. And you can always use it to block with it for a bit. For chest piece, the Spring Tunic. Yeah, of course, the additional resources. And again, the additional block in a pinch. But you never know. Additional resources are very handy. If you got a smaller hand because you blocked a bit, then once every 3 turns you have additional resources to spare to shoot an arrow, and as the most expensive card in his deck costs 1, then yeah, it's always enough for it. The other two, the arms and the legs, usually go in tandem. I usually use them on the same turn actually. Snapdagger Scalers are just there to give an arrow go again, so I can go wide or wider for 1 turn. And the Bullseye Bases are usually used on that turn to pop in another arrow in my arsenal and give it +1. There is some additional sideboard for the equipment. I put in that dealer just in case. You never know when you want to use it, but yeah, it's there. I got no room boots for the Kano match just in case. I need more arcane barrier. Currently I already have 2, but maybe sometimes 3 is nice. And I got 2 pieces of Iron Rod equipment, the gauntlet and the legs, for a more physical matchup. You never know when you need it. Maybe against Dorinthia, maybe against Ira, or a big Bravo, or something like that, where you just think, alright, I'm not gonna go wide, I'm just gonna use all the additional defense. So that's why those are there. But during the tournament, I actually never used them. They were there, but I never used them. Right, let's go over the deck itself. First, the arrows. I run 20 arrows in total. Most of them red. Not all of them, but most of them red. So first are the big arrows, the ones which you want to hit with the Azalea, you want to give dominate. So these are usually strength 5, cost 1, and have some weird effect on your opponent, so they can't do anything. So for that case I run 2 sleep darts, which blank your opponent. Very handy against Dorinthia, very handy against Bravo, very handy against Rhinar. So it's for most matchup it's a good card. Maybe except Dash, that's a little bit less, but for most matchup it's nice to hit your opponent. Next is the Hamstring shot, makes them pay more for the next attack they do. Now it hampers their turn a bit, so that's where it's good. Next up we have 2 Remorseless. Great arrow, gives an addition, a few points of additional damage to your opponent, especially if they go wide. It's not as effective against Ira as I hoped, because they usually use Kodachi, big attack. So they usually take only 1 damage, but against some other players, I did against one Dorinthia player, I did like 4 additional damage, because they played a whole bunch of other stuff in front of their weapon attack, so it's actually quite nice arrow. And of course the best one, the red in the ledger. That's the best arrow, hands down. It just hampers your opponent, especially if they want to go wide, so a Ninja or Dorinthia, something that they can't do multiple actions, they can only do one thing, and that's it, so they won't hit you back. Next up is a whole bunch of some smaller arrows, which have some effect to help the deck a bit. First I play 2 Searing shots, just for the additional damage, and it costs 0, sorry, it's free. So it's nice something to make during a turn where you go a little bit wider, and maybe it does a little bit damage. I shot it once for 10 damage, and 11 when it hit, so that's a nice one. Same goes a bit for the Endless Arrow. It's a 0 cost, 4 damage. It's good, especially when you use the scalers on it, so you can shoot it again. Comes back, so you have something to put in your arsenal, so it's a great card. Next up I play 2 Sikkim shots, just for a turn where I want to go wider a bit. So first I shoot a Sikkim shot, then I shoot a bigger dominant arrow. Of course you have to have more cards in your hand those turns, but if you have that, then that's a very nice one to have. Further I play 4 Witch Rider shots, the yellow and the red ones, and I play these for the opt 1 effect especially. So I play these usually with redliner, just to put them in my arsenal face up, and so I can opt 1 again, usually the second time in a row, just to make sure that up there there's an arrow which I can dominate later on. And further they cost 0 and they block for 3, so it's a nice one to have. And finally I also play 2 yellow headshots. I want to have a little bit more yellow cards in the deck to have a little bit more resources, and this one usually still hits for 5, so that's still a very good ID, a very good amount of damage, so that's quite good. After that we have a whole package of buff cards. I played 10 of them in total. I got the red and the yellow Take Aim. It's a great card. +3 or +2 and the reload. It usually means the reload means something comes in my arsenal face down and I can turn it face up with the Skullbone or something else. I also a couple of times used it together with the following card, Plunder Run, which is not a +3, but it has to, for the +3 it has to be played from arsenal. And if you get that together with a Take Aim, then certainly you have to, you can play it from your arsenal. Otherwise you usually have to put it in your arsenal at the end of a turn, and that sometimes is not the greatest. So, but it's a nice card. It gave me a couple of draws and usually a big buff. Next up we got Niblism. Yeah, it's just an easy +3. Play it from your hand, get +3, and we're done. And finally I played 2 Razor Reflexes, red. I was doubting a bit about this, between this one and Increased Attention. Eventually I went with this one because it can give Go Again to an arrow. So I can go wide a bit for a turn. Also not, and also of course it's a reaction, so you can play it later if you need the damage, if you need to push something through, that's nice. The only downside is, compared to the other buffs, is that it costs 1. And sometimes it's very hard to have 1 resource left in the deck. So that might be something to improve later on, but I'm looking for it. Deck also played a couple of defense reactions to get that defense a little bit up. Play 2 Take Cover red, 2 Fate Forseen red, and 2 Springboard Somersaults. They all block for 4. Of course, this Springboard Somersault needs to be played from arsenal to get that, but that's often not a problem, I found. Take Cover gives reload, and the Fate Forseen gives odd 1, so another chance to get your big arrow from the top of your deck to give it a go again. These were very useful around most days, so I think 6 is the correct number. So I'm downing a bit, maybe trying some other ones, maybe a little bit more Take Cover, because that one is really awesome if you don't have time to put something in your arsenal at the end of your turn. Then with Take Cover you can put something in your arsenal. So I might think about switching the Summersaults, or trying at least with for the yellow Take Cover. But that's just testing where it goes. And finally, a bit of like the other cards, like that, the generic stuff. 2 Nock the Deathwissle, just to make sure that I get the arrow I need. And 2 Ravenous Rabble, just to go a little bit wider, and again another opt, or sort of opt ability from the top of your deck, just to see what's there. So usually when you flip a card over with the Skullbone Cross Wrap, and the opt is not the card you want, you put it at the bottom, and if you got a Ravenous Rabble in your hand, you play that first so you can still see what's on top of your deck, and then you might be able to want to switch that around with Azalea's ability. That's my deck. I was actually quite happy with it, and I will let you know when we've improved it again. Thank you.